Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Leading the Way Today, powered by Leadership America. I'm Scott Murray.
And I'm Angel Carlton. Great to have you with us as we share with you the insights of prominent and influential leaders from some of the most recognized companies and organizations in America.
We're going to be taking a peek behind the curtain at all of these successful for-profit and not-for-profit entities and share their secrets and strategies for success, as well as their perspectives on leadership and life.
From culture to collaboration, creativity to innovation, transparency to diversity, we'll be addressing how these leaders in America are creating legacies and leading the way today. Ever wonder what it would be like to grow up in one of America's most well-known families? Well, today we get the honor of spending time with Anthony Kennedy Shriver and learn about the Best Buddies Initiative, which is the world's largest organization dedicated to ending the social, physical, and economic isolation of the 200 million people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, otherwise known as IDD. Anthony is the founder of Best Buddies International and brings to life the importance of creating a diverse workforce. Scott and I both have had the opportunity to meet this dynamic leader, and now you'll have the chance to see why Anthony Kennedy Shriver is leading the way and influencing a better world for us all.
He is the son of Sergeant Shriver and Eunice Kennedy Shriver. I'm talking about Anthony Kennedy Shriver, Maria Shriver's brother. You kind of get it, folks. You know what I'm talking about. And we are really excited that he has stopped by today because he has created a legacy that is above and beyond. If you think back, for those of you that are under the age of, shall we say, 50, something like that, Angel? You certainly know who the Kennedy family is, Eunice Kennedy Shriver. She started the Special Olympics back in 1968. And then her son, Anthony Kennedy Shriver, went to Georgetown University. And in 1989, about 20 years later, he created a little something called Best Buddies International. And he was raised in an incredible giving culture and now has taken what he learned as a youngster and has just gone above and beyond. And so we are delighted to welcome Anthony Kennedy Shriver. How are you?
I'm good. Can I just ask you one question before we get started?
Yeah, go for it.
I just wonder whether when Maria gets interviewed, do you think people say Maria Shriver, the brother of Anthony Kennedy Shriver? Do they say the sister of Anthony Kennedy Shriver?
I love it. I love it.
When you interview Maria, I want you to guarantee me right now that you introduce her as the sister of Anthony Kennedy Shriver.
It is a done deal. It is a done deal. But see, all my years on NBC, I met her on numerous occasions. So I just automatically said, well, everybody knows who she is. That is a wonderful way to start this.
You know what? I've always been referred to as Jeff's little sister. So, I get it.
Well, there you go.
Scott, I'm going on the record for this. I'm going to set up a time when you're going to be able to interview Maria about her Alzheimer's movement, and you're going to introduce her. I'm going to listen, and you're going to introduce her that way. I'm going to set the interview.
Well,
so when you have time to interview her, let me know.
I told you, folks, we were going to have fun during the course of the remainder of the show, and see, I wasn't kidding, was I? Hey, welcome. Thanks so much for being here. What a great way to start it off, and thanks for what you have done for literally millions of people all around the world. I mean, you're in all 50 states. You're in 50 countries around the world. Best Buddies International. Good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Yeah, we are so happy to have you here, Anthony. This is such a treat for our listeners.
Well, we're going to get started right away because we've got lots to talk about, but we do a little something called the lightning round. It's 5 questions that are pretty easy to answer, but it kind of focuses in on who you are and what you're all about. And it has nothing to do with siblings, so that's good news, okay?
Right. It's all about you.
Your first job, Anthony, think back in time and what you learned from it.
I have not had a job yet, so that's a bad question to ask.
That's right. That's a great answer. All right, number 2.
Well,
the good news for me is that it's work of passion, and I've never considered anything I do a job. I've loved everything I've done, so I've been super fortunate, and I've never considered it a job, any of it.
Well, you've done a heck of a good job at it, too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great response. Okay, so Anthony, who were your top 2 mentors in life, and how did they influence you?
I know a lot of people probably say it, but number one's got to be my mother. She influenced everything I do from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, to my values, to my passion for people with special needs, to ensuring that every person I reach out to is included and accepted and feels like they count and they matter. So I learned that from her. My other one has got to be my dad. His relentless, tireless effort for work. I mean, he worked like a complete animal his entire life, up super early, up late at night, traveling on the road. Enormous respect for every individual, whether it's the cook in the restaurant we were in or the President of the United States, treated everybody the same. And I think it's a great lesson for me, great lesson for my kids, great lesson for everybody to, again, treat people with respect. So they're my two.
Those are pretty good choices. No question about that. How about as a leader? And you certainly have been a leader, even though you kidded about the fact that you've never really had a job. You're just passionate about what you have done for decades. What has been the most significant experience in developing your skills as the leader that you've become?
I think the spirit of failure, to be honest with you, the spirit of not getting done what you want to get done, and then sort of going back at it and figuring out a new strategy and figuring out a new way to come at the challenge and get it done and solve it. I think especially when you're young. When I was in college, easy to get demoralized. So I think as a leader and as an entrepreneur, having the determination to always, pick yourself back up when, it's going the wrong direction and stay at it, and then, getting a taste of success. And I think when you start tasting that, it's really energizing and it inspires you to keep going even when you keep hitting the hurdles.
Mm-hmm. There's always a lesson in what we perceive to be failure. So great answer. Great answer. So knowing where you've come from and where you are today, what is the best advice you would give the next generation of young professionals wanting to start an organization in today's changing world?
Well, for me, that's the easiest one of them all. I mean, I really, really, really believe it. And I know people will criticize me and think that, it's easy for me to say this. But, I believe from the very beginning, you got to do something that you're really super passionate about and forget about the money. I think money always comes when you're passionate about something, because I don't care who you are or what you do or what business you're in. I think you'll always have financial success, adequate financial success, if you're super happy and you love what you do and you wake up every morning with enormous energy and it's sort of a step in your foot. And I think so many people now, are so focused on money and so focused on material wealth and gain and becoming famous and social media that they lose the focus of what do they really love. And I say that to my children. I say that to people, countless volunteers we've got all day long. What do you really want to do today? And when you figure out what you really want to do today, make that your work. And then it will never feel like a job. And you'll do really well. And the money will follow.
Well said. Extremely well said. So let's go to the final question here in our lightning round, Anthony. The most defining moment in your entire life. What comes to mind?
Oh, my God.
And I'm sure you've had many.
I think it's got it. I'd say swimming with my aunt, Rosemary Kennedy, who had profound intellectual disabilities. And the reason I say that is because when I was very, very young, swimming with her and growing up with her, I always focused before I jumped in a pool on all the disabilities she had and all the things she couldn't do. And then I realized as a really young kid that she had an ability to swim. And I think it's sort of stuck in my mind forever that every human being I find or run across, I realize they've got some great gift. And it's my challenge to figure out what is their or who's their pool, what's their pool, what's their swimming. And if you're smart enough and good enough, I think you take the time, you can find someone has the gift to swim in some shape, form, or fashion, because God gave everybody that one great talent. And, to try to focus on that your entire life, it brings you an enormous amount of joy, and you're around people who will celebrate life and celebrate their accomplishments and their skills. So I think it was, I never forget it, getting in the pool with her. I know the pool. I know the location. I know what it looked like. I know the day. I know what the trees look like. It was the fall. I know the city I was in. I mean, everything. It's just sort of etched in my brain.
Oh, awesome. And, I got chills as you were telling that story. And what a gift that you have to see the gift in others. If we can truly all possess something like that, to see who we are, see that specialness in everybody, gosh, whew, what a great world this would be.
Well, I mean, I think it's it's the concept of, choose to include. And I think, people nowadays, our whole society sort of, I think, in the mode of exclude. push people away, isolate, separate. And I just think it's just an enormous mistake and leads to enormous failure and enormous heartbreak. And it's demoralizing in your soul in so many ways.
Yeah.
I think, it's got to be about bringing people in, acceptance, inviting, inclusiveness, choose to include, as they say. And I think that's the only way to live a full, rich, rewarding life that's
Definitely.
calm and peaceful.
Can't do it alone. We absolutely can't do it alone. So would you say that that moment, that defining moment that Scott just asked you about, was where the incentive was that started that planted that seed at a young age to start an organization like this?
I think it's part of it. I mean, I think it's part of it. I mean, I think, I kind of, when that experience happened, it wasn't something that sort of a lightning rod didn't go off. It's more looking back, kind of thinking of things that kind of helped me sort of have an interest in people who are different or unique, or as I say, have special abilities. But I think, everybody's got special abilities. And I think it's, that spirit and contributed to the idea that, whomever it's the person that's a little special in your class, whether it's the person that's sort of, quote, the nerd in the class, or person that's not a great athlete, or a guy that doesn't look the best, all people that feel like they're on the fringe. I think having her in my life, Rosemary, and so many of the other people that my mom brought around and my dad brought around, that, life was so much more alive and so much more fun and so much more exciting, and the conversation so much better at the table when you have all these people from all different walks of life. And it's sort of like you see the spirit of God in all these people.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that, he's at work, and these people that you never would, normally take the time to invite him into your home to break bread. And that it's so much better. And that when you get out of that and you sort of hang around people that are all the same or just like you, or, it's so, to me, kind of like not exciting, not, intriguing. It's not enriching. It's not, doesn't make you feel alive in the same way. And I think, we're just better off as human beings. We're happier as human beings. And we feel the spirit of our Lord more when we have people of diversity around you, because you see what a magical creator we have to make all these special people, and how much better we all are when we include all these special people and celebrate their gifts, whatever they may be.
Well, you think back, Anthony, I don't know if that vision that you had back in the late 80s when you were at Georgetown, and it certainly has become your mission over the last, it's hard to believe, but close to 30 years now. Is it turned out to be what you thought it would be? Has it turned out to what you initially had envisioned it?
Well, honestly, I really only envisioned doing something at my school, if you can believe, in the beginning. I really only envisioned trying to have a small volunteer program at Georgetown. And then my vision when I graduated was to try to raise enough money to endow the program at Georgetown so that local chapter would have enough money to run in perpetuity, and that would kind of be my thing. And I was going to go off to law school and, maybe go into politics or be a lawyer or something like that. So I didn't really have a grand scheme. And I think, the one great lesson I really learned when I started off with Best Buddies, was, I didn't have a plan. I went to my uncle, Senator Kennedy, and I asked him, do you think he could get me a little money at the federal level to help me expand Best Buddies after I decided I wanted to do more than Georgetown University? And I'll never forget this as long as I live, and I think it's a great lesson for other people sort of in the entrepreneur business, that he said, listen, if you wait around for the federal government, you could be as old as me by the time you get money out of them. If you really want to make something go, you got to get people like you engaged and involved, and that'll grow your organization. And then you'll see whether you've got anything that's worth a damn. And that was a great lesson for me, not to sit back and wait for the federal government to write one big check or some big donor to write one big check, that you got to go out there, you got to pound the pavement and get in the street and travel and get on the airplane, get in the hotels and on the campuses. And, before you know it, you might wake up one day and have something that's, meaningful. And I think, I kind of kept my blinders on, one day at a time, pound the pavement, raise a little bit of money here or there. And then, one day here I am sitting here almost 30 years later, and, we've got something that's, I think, significant and meaningful, and really helps, really supports people on a day-to-day basis. But I never had that, I never had a plan, I guess. And I never had, I never had a plan. I was just sort of take it each day, try to do the best you can this day, grow it, develop a strategy this year, maybe 3 years out. But, I never had a, decade-long strategy or, wow, I want to wake up when I'm 50 and I want to be here. I never had that. Maybe I should have, and probably it's a mistake, but that's just sort of the way that I've always planned and operated.
Trust me, I think you worked out just great.
You've been a part of so many stories. I mean, I can only imagine the stories that you have to share. Anthony, is there one that really impacted you? I mean, really had an emotional impact on you?
Well, I think, one of the other things that sort of etched in my brain is, seeing my mother really, 30, 40 years into Special Olympics when she had a major global movement going all over the world with raising hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and, being kind of quite, a woman that had quite a legacy of her own and sort of somewhat, in my mind anyways, sort of a legend in her time as a female leader and a leader of male or female. And always remembering, when our special ability kids would come around, that she was always the first person in the pool in her bathing suit, teaching them how to swim. And, that image of her in a pool at 70, 75, 80, 82 years of age, teaching, one kid how to swim when she's built, a monstrosity of an organization that's impacting millions of people, really is, I think, a defining moment in my mind, knowing that no matter how big or how substantial something is, that you've got to have the humility and the understanding that you've got to have the passion for the actual cause itself and the movement that you're in, and that the big events and the money and the travel and meeting heads of state and, giving speeches to thousands of people, that's all good. But if you don't really have that in your core, that you're really interested as she was, and teaching a young one person to swim and that count and that matters, that one person, you're in the wrong business. And I really remember that as a kid, if I'm not really interested in, breaking bread with a person with intellectual disabilities, if I'm not really interested in learning about that human being, if I don't think it matters to take them to the movies or to make them feel included in the school cafeteria so they're not sitting there alone, or that it matters that they get a job and they make $20,000 a year, that really counts and that I'm passionate about that. If that's not what I'm interested in, I'm in the wrong business. And that you've got to always go back and make sure that you're engaged at that local level, because that's where it all started. And if you keep your eye on that mark, everything else follows from that. When you lose that and you start getting excited about, giving the speeches and raising the money and meeting with the, Emir of Qatar, you've lost your way and your organization is going to go in the tank. So I think, that's an image that continues to sort of resonate for me, and is sort of, again, another one that's sort of etched in my mind, looking at her, the very frail, 80-year-old woman in a bathing suit that didn't fit and a bathing cap that looked crazy on her head and, doing it all old school, but nevertheless being, 95 pound, 80-year-old woman sitting in her swimming pool,
and seeing the joy on that child's face too, when they're learning to swim. I mean, that's awesome. And
then you realize that's why Special Olympics is where it is, and why that thing is, because every decision you make, it's got to be made based on the idea, what all we're trying to do is teach one person how to swim. And, every decision I make at Best Buddies, it's the one idea, we're trying to get that guy a job, and does this contribute to that? Or we're trying to get that kid to feel like he counts or he matters and he's not alone in the lunchroom. If this decision I'm making impacts that, then I'm making the right decision. So anyways, I think it all really goes back to that. I've got that great image of her, and I think about it every day, and I think about it, what's my image like that, when I'm making decisions for Best Buddies.
That's great.
Totally identified with everything that you were sharing there when you were talking about that, because as a member of the board of directors of Special Olympics for a number of years locally in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then on the state board here in Texas. And I still, to this day, MC the spring games that they have at the University of Texas at Arlington every April. And these kiddos are just rock stars. They're just something special. So I totally identified with what you were sharing with. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Considering your longtime experiences with the disability community, what might be the best advice you could give a CEO or an organization looking to employ people with IDD?
Well, number one, as an employer, I've got 400 people now that work at Best Buddies in the U.S., another couple hundred outside the U.S. I can't tell you how tough it is to find good employees. I mean, it's just, to me, it's almost becoming my number one challenge. One of the things that's the most important things for me to focus in on is finding good employees and then retaining them. And if you're a CEO that's looking for good employees and you're trying to find a way to retain them and to have them come to work with enormous energy and enthusiasm and to contribute to your work culture in a positive way, there's no better place to go than Best Buddies Jobs. I mean, there just isn't. And I'm not saying it because I work at Best Buddies, but, you got to have a workforce that's dynamic and diverse and exciting and people that are enthusiastic in 2017. Otherwise, you're dead. And I think you can't compete in this work environment against companies like a Google or a Facebook who's giving stock and got ping pong tables and gives you unlimited vacation time unless you're giving them something that I think moves and tickles their heart and their soul. And I think when you create diversity in the workforce and you have different people in the workforce and you include people with special abilities from Best Buddies Jobs, you're giving your culture something that's better than a ping pong table or unlimited vacation time or stock options in, Alphabet that, most companies can't compete against, Alphabet or Facebook because we don't have the resources to do that. But the way that you can compete against them is creating a workforce that's as diverse as any in the world. And you can't have a workforce that's diverse as any in the world unless you have people from Best Buddies Jobs in it. And when they touch and inspire your employees, they're going to rather come to your company than go to a company that has ping pong tables and stock options because it changes their soul and enriches their life in a way they never thought possible. So I think you got to hire you got to hire our people. You got to hire them because if you want a company that competes and is successful, you got to have people with special needs in there.
Spot on. And as a result of that, all that you talk about when you deal with Best Buddies International, whether it's stateside or wherever it might be in the world, you have created this incredible legacy. And as you mentioned earlier in the program, both of your parents, who you looked upon as your top two mentors or role models of your entire life have passed on in recent years. But I'll tell you what, I'm sure they're looking down on you right now, Anthony, as we continue this conversation, most proud of all you continue to do. So my question to you, what do you cherish most? What is it that is just very special to you to this point, almost 3 decades later? And what lies ahead as we look into the late teens and into the 20s for Best Buddies worldwide?
The thing that I cherish the most at this point in my life, to be honest with you, is my faith. I know it's cheesy, and I'm sure people go, "Oh, yeah, that's a good one," and I hate to say it, but it's really the older I get and the work I do, the more important, my faith and having, a God-centered life is, critical, I think, to long-term success, because I think if you're at something long-term, there's peaks and valleys, and, life can be super challenging. Marriage can be super challenging. Families can be challenging. Your work can be challenging. And I think if you don't have, God-centered life and you don't have the time and the patience to be calm and to pray and to create space in your life where you recognize that it's His plan, not your plan, and that you need to be calm and you need to listen in order to determine your journey going forward, I think you don't have a shot at it, because I think it can get overwhelming. And, all the needs financially you have in a company and growth in a company and employees in the company and the challenges that your employees face and that your children face and your marriage faces, all these things that are out there, I think, I don't know anybody that can do it really well over a really long period of time unless they have, God right there in the center, and every day they're on their knees knowing that He's got the plan, and you got to have unconditional faith and turn yourself over and surrender to His will and His leadership and His power in order to figure out what you're supposed to do next and where you're going to be in 2020 or 25. Because, I have confidence He's got a plan for me. I don't know exactly what it is, and He's got a plan for Best Buddies. I don't know exactly what it is, but I just keep trying to listen, and I keep trying to be quiet so that I can figure it out and hear Him, and I just keep going at it. And, the older I get, the more I do it, and the more success we have. We're having our biggest year this year financially ever. We've raised more money to date than we've ever done in the history of our organization. We have more employees than we've ever had. We have more people we serve. and impact, now over 1 million people a year. We have more people working in the workforce than we've ever had globally, ever. And every year I do it more and more. Every year I risk more and more to say, you know what, relax. It's not your show. It's his show. Calm down. It's all going to work out. And when I do that, things go better, and the plan unfolds, and it becomes more and more clear. So, that's really my strategy going forward. And it's probably so cheesy, and people are probably saying, you
Not
guys
at
are kidding
all.
me. But that's the way that I'm going at it, and keep doing it, and it's been working well. And I learned, that's a great gift my parents shared and passed on their faith. And my grandmother had unbelievable faith, and I think it's the only way you can keep it going, because people's lives are just, to me, super challenged and really, really hard to keep it all together.
Mm-hmm. Wow, Anthony, I agree. More CEOs need to have God as their silent business partner, and that sounds like what's happening at Best Buddies. What an inspiring message. That you're using faith is the foundation of everything you do, and it is certainly paying off. I mean, look what is showing up for you. Look what's being delivered. What a beautiful message, and what a beautiful soul you are. We really appreciate you being here
That's
today.
good, though. I like that. I'm going to use that line if it's okay with you. I like that. I never thought of a silent business partner.
There you go. There you
Absolutely.
go.
It's a good line. I'm telling you, I like it. Silent business partner.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to use it. If
Great.
you don't mind.
Not at all. Not at all.
I think it's good.
You're making her blush.
No, it's true.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good one.
Thank you, both of you. You guys are great, and I appreciate all your support of Best Buddies, and look forward to many more years working together. And I look forward, Scott, to your interview with my sister Maria.
Now, what's her last name?
Her name is Shriver. She's sister of Anthony Kennedy Shriver.
You beat me to it. I had a little digger there I was going to get you with, but you beat me to it. Thank you much,
All right,
Anthony
bye.
Kennedy Shriver. All right.
BestBuddies.org.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our special guest?
Well, Madeline Borkin, who is our VP of Sales, who also happens to be a good friend of mine, has some insights to share on the I4CP Insight segment here. So, Madeline, hello, welcome. We are so glad you're here. So glad you're here. And because of your position with I4CP, you had inspired this company to be, as we're a human capital research firm, as many know, you inspired us to conduct a study about individuals with IDD in the workplace. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What are some of the key findings that came from that study?
Yes. Pretty cool opportunity to work for a company that really looks at some of the different people practices that drive high performance. I kept hearing a statistic that 85% of adults with IDD do not have a paid job in the community, and so I just kept thinking, wow, that's a pretty high number. And then in addition to that, I'm pretty familiar with to your point, Angel, the enormously talented and skilled population of folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And then when I think about corporations having all these open jobs, the desire to increase diversity and inclusion, have a culture of engagement as well as increase customer satisfaction, it just made sense for me to go to the research team and Kevin Oakes, our CEO, and say, you know what, why don't we think about looking at this, seeing if there is really a link to these individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and the possibility of having an impact to the bottom line. And it was really neat because when we conducted this study, we partnered with Best Buddies International, and we discovered that 4 key areas. I mean, that talent drives business results. It demonstrates an inclusive and diverse culture. It's certainly attractive to other talent pools and undoubtedly improves customer satisfaction. In fact, most of the profiles demonstrated a ready pool of ideal candidates. So more engaged, dependable, motivated, having great attendance. I mean, high productivity, just a number of things.
Wow.
Earlier this week in USA Today, David Casey, the Vice President of Workforce Strategies and Chief Diversity Officer at CVS Health, one thing that was really neat, he said it's important to recognize that people with disabilities are part of the customer base.
True.
And we're reaching into our community that is often overlooked, and it's a no-brainer for us that this is one area where we draw talent from. It's a safe bet that anyone over age of 10 knows someone with a disability. And so it's just really cool to know that looking at the market demonstrates impact.
Well, Madeline, great information that you share with us as we kick things off today. But I'm just kind of curious, do you have one or two examples, specific examples that you might share with us on how high-performance organizations actually leverage this untapped talent? Anything come to mind?
Sure. So one of my favorite stories is with Fifth Third Bank. It's actually one of the case studies that's referenced in this particular study. There's Colin, who was hired at Fifth Third Bank, and he was tasked with entering the account numbers for hundreds of thousands of clients of Fifth Third Bank. And basically the size of the room was the size of 2 football fields. And he had to manually enter all of these account numbers. And they were transitioning to a brand new computer system. And so the manager gave him about 3 weeks of data entry work. And within 2 days, Colin came back and said, okay, I'm done. And the manager, had his doubts, but gave him another 3 weeks worth of work. And Colin, a couple of days later, realized that he had already entered one of the account numbers. And he went to the manager and said, hey, I already entered this number. And the manager had some doubts, but thought, you know what, I better research this. And in fact, after researching it, there was a major glitch in the system that Colin was able to discover just from being so detail-oriented, so focused on the quality of his work, that he was able to identify this, which is just
invaluable,
invaluable and completely
awesome.
Amazing. That's one story.
Oh, that's a great story. That's a great story. You were telling me about a story with a worker at Walgreens.
Yes.
That's another good one to share.
We were interviewing as one of the case studies, the Chief Diversity Officer, Steve Pemberton at Walgreens, and he keeps telling us over and over and over again that he receives calls from his store managers that say that customers often tell us that Walgreens has become their pharmacy of choice as a result of having employees in the retail setting with IDD. And there's one particular employee that I'm familiar with locally here in Wisconsin. Her name is Sophia, and I'll tell you, every time I go in there, it's just absolutely phenomenal to see her and to experience her.
Oh, yeah, and how the other customers truly enjoy that as well. It's very heartwarming.
Yes.
We're speaking with Madeline Borkin, I4CP expert on individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the workplace. And today we will be speaking with Anthony Kennedy Shriver from Best Buddies. And I understand, Madeline, that you are highly involved with this organization. Tell us, why and how did you get involved with Best Buddies?
I am, Angel. So my son, Jacob Borkin, was born with Down syndrome 11 and a half years ago. And when he was born, all I kept thinking about was the limitations. And I kept thinking about I need to keep him safe. And there were all these things that I was worried about. And when I happened to be watching television one day, and Mark Wiley, the SVP of Talent at Best Buddies International, was featured, and he was talking about the Best Buddies mission, and all of a sudden I thought, that seems interesting. I wonder if there's one locally. And so I called and I got involved, and one of the most amazing things happened is that I witnessed over and over and over again at different events in the schools, in the community, in the workplace, the development of inclusion, the development of leadership skills for both individuals with and without disabilities, and the most amazing aspect of it being the workplace and just seeing the possibilities. So my lens, instead of looking at it through this tinted view and all of these limitations, all of a sudden it just opened my eyes to all the different possibilities. And I was able to talk with different self-advocates and employers and other parents, and just to see the inclusive nature of it, I was mesmerized, and I couldn't help myself. And ever since then, I've been on advisory boards. I've been supporting Best Buddies in a number of different ways in the school system, as well as with corporations. And I have to tell you, it's just been such an inspiration. I can't thank the Best Buddies organization more.
You know, it's a funny thing to listen to you talk. You can just hear the compassion and the concern that you have in your voice for your son. And I have some friends that also have children with Down syndrome. And when they were born, they thought, oh my gosh, all the things that I had dreamed about, none of them will become reality. Mm-hmm. And yet organizations, Madeline, like Best Buddies, suddenly make those myths suddenly be history. And it is, I can only imagine, as a parent of a child with intellectual developmental disabilities, I'm sure the concerns of the average parent are nothing with what you deal with every single day. And yet at the same time, I can only imagine, again, just listening to your voice today, how you cherish just having this child in your life, and then knowing there's an organization like Best Buddies on top of that. How special is that?
It is truly amazing, just to help me navigate through the different opportunities without limitations has been absolutely incredible. And knowing that Jacob is included is probably the most priceless aspect of it.
Is there one? And I hear you getting a little choked up here. This is radio, not television, so we can't see what's going on. But I can just tell in the short time that I've known you, you're just a very, I use the word compassionate, but I can't think of a better word. You just are so concerned about those around you, and yet here it is your son Jacob, who we're talking about, young men and young women, thankfully have an organization like Best Buddies International. And I'm most honored that I get a chance to MC the event that they have here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area every year. And it's amazing. They're just, there's not a better thing you can be a part of.
And I'm inspired by Madeline, who is being proactive in creating opportunities for these individuals like her son. And that's where obviously the motivation comes from. But how inspiring. You've inspired me to want to get involved with the organization as well. So, is
there a closing comment you'd like to share with us, Madeline? We've got 1 or 2 minutes before we wrap it up. Anything come to mind?
I think the important thing is to realize that this is truly an untapped talent pool, and there are just so many possibilities on how they could support different corporations. I mean, every year at the I4CP annual conference, we feature Best Buddies, and to get the calls from all of the different Fortune 500 companies that will come to us and say, I want to know more. I want to hire individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the workplace, or they tell me about a success story. It's just absolutely phenomenal, and you just start to realize that if you view the world through the lens of possibilities and opportunities, that they will come.
Mm-hmm.
Not a thing I could add to that. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you know a Best Buddy out there and you spend all of 3 minutes with them, it's suddenly your best friend. They are the most trusting, most loyal, just incredible young men and women.
Yeah, it does build leadership skills, not only within them, but within the young kids that are helping them. It's really heartwarming, and it's a very beneficial organization for everyone who gets involved with it.
Madeline Borkin, VP, I4CP. Hey, my friend, keep up the great work. Thanks for your time today. But more importantly, thanks for all that you continue to do every single day for these young people.
Thank you both for sharing this story.
And thanks to you, Angel. I'm Scott Murray.
And I'm Angel Carlton.
And as we always remind you, live your legacy by leading the way. Till next week, be safe.